Woods podcast, a place where gaming meets comics, meets sports, meets movies, as well as inspiration. Of course, I'm your host, King Von Jr. You can follow me on social media, of course, on Twitter /X at 301, on Twitter 301 King Von Jr. You can follow me, of course, you can follow the show's Twitter page at Victory Pod One. I'm also on Instagram at Mr. King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Instagram page at Victorious Ones Podcast. Of course, I'm the social media producer for Perfect Plex Talk Radio. On Mondays, hosted by friend of the program Mike Knox, and so therefore I would like to present to you, my predictions for Saturday night's main event, as well, as well as just the week in wrestling when it comes to my weekly recap. So apparently I had a little of a technical issue when it came to the StreamYard end. But I want to make sure that this, of course, is again recorded. Um, but of course, accidents happen. So that's another, make sure that doesn't happen this time. So with like I see, of course, with that being said, I'm going to my review of Friday Night SmackDown. And so, so if anything, the main, we see the main talking points, if you will, when it came to SmackDown, where Gunther defeated LA Knight, of course, to win the last time is now tournament, and so right after, of course, Gunther managed to put LA Knight in the middle of the ring and apply a submission that replicated Cena's STF or STFU, and they made famous Star's career and forced LA Knight to tap out. So as the show went off the air, Gunther screamed into the camera. He said, hope you're paying attention. At Saturday's main event, you finally and definitely will give up." He was screaming loud and clear to make sure that John Cena heard him. So of course, like I said, that was the highlight. Gunther winning a 16-man tournament. So now he faces Cena in DC. So the other, the other highlights, if you will, were of course, where Ilya Dragunov defeated Carmelo Hayes by way of pinfall with an H-bomb. Of course, Alexa Bliss and Kairi Sane, with the Twisted Bliss DDT. So of course, we also saw Jade Cargill defeat Alba Fire to retain the WWE Women's Championship, and so that's pretty much it. Of course, Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre. The feud continues. So of course, that's pretty much it right there. So like I'll say that those are some of the main highlights. As well as Nia Jackson, Lash Legend, attacking Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss and the Kabuki Warriors. We're holding up the women's tag title, so inserting their name into the mix, inserting their names into the mix for the women's tag titles. So of course, when it comes to Monday Night Raw, it's also this one. Of course, as far as Monday Night Raw, Logan Paul tonight, right? But pretty much as far as that is concerned, back to this. So like I said, Logan Paul defeated LA Knight as Braun Breaker delivered a message to CM Punk. As Logan Paul defeated LA Knight with a frog splash. During the match, Braun Breaker Bronson Reed came to ringside, but the Masked Man made his return once again, helping set LA Knight up for a Logan Paul frog splash. So the Masked Man, of course, provide assistance to the Vision just like he did at War Games. So I guess, like I said, the Masked Man made his appearance, of course, once again. After the match, Braun Breaker hit LA Knight with a spear before a pair of tsunamis for Bronson Reed. The second one was actually on the card backstage. Then after the match, Braun Breaker cut a promo that was just absolutely, absolutely unbelievable to see. Well, not completely, but he's definitely, of course, Braun's definitely getting into his element more than more than he's ever been before. And so this promo real quick. Da-da-da. So what the issue was on the StreamYard side that I realized that, like I said, it's neither here nor there. So, right then, so righting the wrongs, if you will. The last, here it was, like I said, I pretty much said Braun Breaker basically ended CM Punk. So Braun's promo says, imagine preaching her entire career every single week. I'm straight edge. I've never done drugs a day in my life. I never had a sip of alcohol, and then it turns out he ends up looking like the biggest crackhead anybody's ever seen. So I was like, oh man, and not only that, but of course, Braun Breaker proceeds to say that not only will he take Punk's title, but he even take his wife. I said, oh man, Braun Breaker is absolutely unhinged. You know what I mean? And like I said, like I said, just when it comes to, just when it comes to just his like his improvement on the mic, um, like pretty much mic work is in the Steiner's DNA. Um, well, not completely, but it's definitely getting better. Outside of those, Steiner Mad promos, if you will. So like I said, that was definitely something great to see. And but other than that, Gunther opened the show with a promo as he vowed to not only beat John Cena Saturday's main event, but to break Cena's spirit and to make him quit. We also saw that Io Sky defeated Kairi Sane by way of pinfall with an over the moonsault. As Rhea Ripley eventually made her way to ringside and to nullify Kairi's advantage of having Asuka there, and as chaos would continue to ensue, which allowed Io to pick up the victory. Then for the World Tag Team Championship match, AJ Styles and Dragon Lee defeated the Viking Raiders by way of pinfall after Styles had a phenomenal form on Ivar, and then after the match, the New Day returned in front of the champs before the Usos interrupted, saying they were back in the tag team mix. So clearly it shows that that the main event Jay experiment did not turn out the way they thought it would. So now they're going back to the drawing board because they know that Jay is at his best as a tag team specialist, as we saw, with obviously with the Unreal, the WWE Unreal series on Netflix, really exposed a lot that I guess that they really didn't a lot of stuff that they didn't really want us to know, of course as it pertains to, like I said, as it pertains to the the final workings, the inner workings backstage, if you will. And so, what I mean, like I said, as far as that, like I said, how much they talked about, how Jay was just, like sort of winded and blown up, meaning, that he would get pretty much, get winded, whenever he's running the ropes or, whatever the case may be, and just, some of his sort of, shortcomings in the ring, and and the thing about it is that everybody's not meant to have a Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Edge, or Booker T, a solo run after legendary, pretty much after a legendary a tag run, and so so I would say the same thing when it comes to Jay. And of course, even though he did beat Gunther at WrestleMania, even though we all know that that Gunther is pretty much Gunther, is pretty much head and shoulders above leagues above Jey Uso. Of course when it comes to just a pure just a pure like in ring standpoint. You know what I mean? And but of course at the same time, Jay is known for being a moneymaker, and that is something that they definitely capitalized on, especially when it came to WrestleMania being in Las Vegas. Those Yeet shirts and things like that. So at least he was moving the needle in that aspect. But when it came to all these other standpoints, especially when it comes to how many dislike videos he had and everything like that, that's definitely, I would say, it's called major red flag and cause for concern. Um, so as far as that, it's like eventually, the thing is, like you just can't keep blaming, fans for being haters. But you got guys, eventually oversee that that there's a bigger, issue that that was lying underneath that. And so and maybe rather it's if you see that there's a common pattern when it comes to how many dislikes someone like Jey Uso had. I mean, eventually, you have to look at who's the common denominator, but the common denominator behind this issue. And it goes to show that the experiment was not what they thought would turn out to be. So now they are, back to the drawing board, and the Usos, work best as a tag team, as tag team specialists. So I would just say, that Jey, just got that 90 overall rating on, 2K24 and 2K25, just out of present of the moment. Um, you know what I mean? But whatever. I digress. Not to sound like a Jey Uso hater or anything like that. That's not the case at all whatsoever. But I'm just being honest and just being a realist about it. We also said that Raquel Rodriguez confronted Stephanie Bakir. And funny thing is, it's funny to see. Funny thing is, to see Raquel wear her Houston Texans shirt, right? The day after Texans defeated the Chiefs. But anyway, like I said, Bakir, was of course being interviewed by Jackie Redmond. Jackie Redmond, and of course Stephanie said that she talks through actions rather than words before Nikki Bella came to the ring. Demanded a rematch after losing a Survivor Series before Nikki could even get too far. Of course, Raquel entered the picture and threw the trash out by throwing Nikki into the ring post before coming face to face with Stephanie. And so, of course, we saw that was Roxanne Perez. Of course, we saw that Raquel would challenge Stephanie for the championship. And then, of course, Roxanne Perez defeated Valkyria, of course, by way of pinfall with Pop Rocks. And side note, we also saw as Lara was coming out, Bayley was accompanying her to the ring, and we saw that Bayley was clapping for somebody or recognized somebody in the audience. Come to find out, that would be her future opponent, Sol Ruca, for Saturday night's main event. So we saw Liv Morgan interfere multiple times, finally breaking Valkyria's eyes to set up the finish. And your winner of that match, of course, Roxanne Perez. And so Liv is going to be, more affiliated with Roxanne, being more tightly connected to her, especially because Raquel is challenging, Stephanie for the Women's World Championship. And so as far as that, now obviously, those are the main talking points as far, like I said, as far as Raw, and then also. That's pretty much it when it comes to the highlights. When it comes to the when it comes to the highlights from Monday Night Raw, and then now of course when it comes to NXT, NXT was an excellent show as well, and we saw sorry about that. Oh, but for me, it's interesting down the mic. Oba talked about being a two-time NXT champion. Says this is true power. NXT was not the same without the ruler on top. He said so. Oba says that the universe did what it does best and found a way to correct itself, and so he reclaimed his title. Now he's done Ricky Saints at Saturday night's main event. He'll face Cody Rhodes. He'll look in his eyes and he won't see the future. He'll see the now. The ruler, the destroyer, the bringer of war in all his glory. And now he's to talk about the end of the show, and of course Ricky Saints shows up. He wants to congratulate Oba on a prophecy fulfilled. He says his back is lighter because Femi did exactly what he said he would do, and that's why he shook his hand. But he's man enough to admit that Oba was the better man. Deadline. On the drive home, he started to think about what was next, and seeing Femi with the title really made him feel like that was it. That he was never going to get a chance to reclaim the title once again. Then remember, he's absolute Ricky Saints, and if you think he's going to bow down and fade to the black, then guess what? You got another thing coming. And of course, Ricky Saints is going to come for what's his. He's going to steer it back on course, and remember, it's 1-1. So this really, so he gave Oba a shot, and he's demanding his rematch for the NXT Championship in a tiebreaker. Then here's when Javon Evans comes in, and so Javon says again, interrupt. He's watching Deadline over and over again. He's like He's like, you know what? The young OG survived the Iron Survivor Challenge, and because of that, that means he's earned an NXT Championship opportunity in New Year's Evil. But then he figured, why wait until January to have his match? So he was like, he's on fire, he's locked in, he's ready, and nobody's going to dictate his moment. So Open's picking up what he's putting down. Javon says he's going to have his title match tonight. But Femi shakes his head, and Ricky asks, what's the rush? He was on fire having all these great matches, and he pitches Evans on waiting until he gets a rematch so that they can have their match. And Javon says, of course, Javon says why he's doing this. All he ever hears is, are you sure, Javon? He's not the future. He's right now. He doesn't need stars lining up. Other than that, but the thing about it is that, of course, since Open's the man he has to beat, if anybody gets a match tonight, it's going to be him. So Ricky Saints sold, and he says it's his time. Shakes his hand and tells him to go get his. So of course that's when that's when the match is set up. And next up we have Jordan Grace versus Kalani Jordan. And of course Kalani Jordan went by way of pinfall with a 450 splash. Excuse me. And of course we see Shallow Hill interview backstage, talk scientifically about the biochemistry of nervousness, and says he's ready to whoop Lexis King's, and get a break. And next up, we have the match with Lexis King versus Shallow Hill. The winner of this match by pinfall back suplex drops to a neck breaker is Shallow Hill. And of course, we see all Ego Ethan Page is shown walking backstage to send us to the break. And so of course, we see Oba Femi is being interviewed backstage. He says he hopes Cody Rhodes is watching tonight because he knows what Javon Evans is all about, but he has no idea what the roller is capable of. So that being said, all Ego Ethan Page makes his entrance against on Mike. He says it doesn't matter when it comes to his North American Championship. And he came to NXT to drink a fountain of youth and soak up as much knowledge as possible, but it turns out he's the only guy asking the questions nobody has the guts to ask. Athletes ask how to do the best dropkick. He asks how to hurt that guy's jaw. And then he worked it out by trial and error with any warm body this company throws, this company calls a pro wrestler. So of course he says we're all fixated on social media, trying to earn that finger pointing photo of the childhood idol when they can stand in the back and stare at him while he stands in the ring with all these titles. And now we all have to watch John Cena have his final match in a few days and walk away for good. And of course Ethan says about a week after he's gone, he'll be a distant memory, leaving a giant void to be filled by a man with a giant ego. And inserts himself. He says by the same man who won the NXT Championship in record time, and then when he couldn't find a path back to it, he won the North American Championship and turned into the most coveted prize on all of WWE. He says he could have deserved a break, but he kept going and won the AAA Mixed Tag Team Championship, becoming one like no one else. He says that there are 3 days that they're pointing to: the day you brought into this world, the day you leave it, the day you realize Ethan Page is the biggest superstar WWE has to offer. And of course going forward under supervision. He says in NXT, and then we see good footage out of focus. We see Tony D'Angelo walking down the bridge, and then Tony appears in the ring behind Page. His spine buster and drops scraps of black cloth on all Ego. And then we see Sol Ruka backstage. And then next up we have Sol Ruka versus Ren Sinclair, the winner of this match by way of pinfall, Sol Ruka with the Soul Snatcher. And we saw that Zarya was in the audience. And afterwards, it's in the parking lot, kind of, have a little back and forth, a little argument, Sol Ruka and Zarya, and they eventually make up and give each other a hug. And then we see Fatal Influence make the entrance to Senate, and then J.C. Jane confronts Kendall Gray and says she's living a Cinderella story, going from obscurity to being an Iron Survivor, and she should know that this is as good as it's gonna get. She has all the people hyping her up and supporting her. Her stocks have never been higher, and she's not just a future, but the now truly living the dream. And of course you see that J.C. Jane is definitely been improving by leaps and bounds. But of course no one else tell the truth. But J.C. Jane has no problem being a bad guy, saying that potential doesn't win championships, and she might have the Evolve Women's Championship on her shoulder, but the NXT title is a whole different level. So like I said, to see J.C. Jane, like I said, make this improvement, it's definitely something to admire. Then we have Hinga Tank being interrupted by OTM. Then we have Javon Evans finally, versus Open Femi for the NXT Men's Championship. great match. Of course, Javon definitely had Oba, on the fences with a series of cutters or RKOs. And of course, however, there was interference from Ricky Saints. Definitely the diversion, which opened the door for Obafemi to win by way of pinfall with fall from grace and to retain the NXT Men's Championship, your winner and still NXT champion, Obafemi. And I must say that when you look at the future, um, of course, when you look at the future of WWE, when you look at the future of the main roster, you look no further than what you have in NXT. When you look at the likes of Obafemi, Trick Williams, and Javon Evans, that is your future. That is your now. And so, of course, I like to give my predictions of Saturday night's main event. Go to my predictions right now. And of course, Saturday night's main event takes place, of course, here in Washington, D.C. on Saturday, December 13th. And so it's going to have a plethora of smorgasbord variety, of different things to do leading up to Cena's final match. And so, predictions. And I will not be with you long. All right, now let's go into my predictions. And for Saturday night's main event, it's only going to be 4 matches. Just like with Survivor Series. And so, like I said, of course, going into Saturday, like I said, there's a variety of activities. This is, of course, Fan Fest is going to be from 2:30 to 6. I got my ticket for that, and it's, of course, going to feature food trucks. It's free, by the way. At food trucks, merchandise, sign making stations, live music, and more is pretty much DC's version of what fan access is, during WrestleMania, especially with sign making. You can report a special message to John Cena before his final match. And pre-registration is required at eventsdc.com. After that, that's from 2:30 to 6, and then that's from 6 to 8. We have the countdown. And so you bring your signs. Special guests will be live in the panel. The show booth inside from 7 to 8, and then we're going to have a post show. It's going to reside in the same location. And so, yeah, that's really what it is in terms of the card. 4 matches, and so the opening match is going to be John Cena versus Gunther. And I would go with the Ring General, winning that. Then we have Cody Rhodes versus Obafemi. The winner of that one, I'm going with the ruler Oba. When it comes to Bayley versus Sol Ruca, I want to say Sol, but I'm kind of leaning towards Bayley just because of experience. And then we have AJ Styles and Dragon Lee versus Javon Evans and Leon Slater. I have the phenomenal AJ Styles and Dragon Lee winning that match. And of course, John Cena has admitted that on Bill Simmons' podcast that that his retirement tour was actually supposed to be longer than the time that was given to him. It was actually supposed to be like 200 days and knocked down to like 36 days, 36 appearances or whatever. And so, and the thing about it was that this could have been better, could have been a much bigger deal, even though the highlights for me, I would say, were for him to break Flair's record, as well as become the Grand Slam champion. However, I will say the best match in my estimation was that Clash of Paris match, with AJ Styles. And so, yeah, if anything, it definitely could have been better. And the thing is, the reason why that happened, the AJ match happened, was because he was fed up with the way he was being booked, and seeing the boom of social media, and pretty much calling out Triple H to demand a match with AJ Styles for one last time. And look what happened, it over delivered. And plus AJ's having his going to be on his farewell run next year. He's on his way out as well. And so if anything, had Cena not did what he did online and make that demand, then we wouldn't have had what we got. As far as that match was concerned. You know what I mean? And so that was Cena having to reclaim his narrative basically. Even though this could have been much better than what we got, but but it's like whatever. It's gonna be his swan song is the way to go out on top. Um, against an opponent like Gunther. I know there's a lot of speculation why it's got to be Gunther, but it's like whatever it is, what it is. I would prefer somebody like over Femi, but hey, like whatever. And then I also want to give my NFL recap. Of course, before all is said and done, get my recap out of the way. Right now, come on, jeez. Here it is, Week 14 recap on Thursday Night Football. The Detroit Lions defeat the Dallas Cowboys 44-30. Tennessee Titans defeat the Cleveland Browns 31-29. The Seattle Seahawks crush the Falcons 37-9. The Jaguars defeat the Colts 36-19. The Vikings shut out the Washington Commanders 31-0. The Bills defeat the Bengals in the game of the week 39-34. The Saints defeat the Buccaneers 24-20. The Steelers defeat the Ravens 27-22. Dolphins, just destroyed the Jets 34-10. The Broncos defeat the Raiders 24-17. The Rams just completely steamrolled and ran over the Cardinals 45-17. Rival game, we have the Packers defeating the Bears 28-21. The Texans defeat the Chiefs 20-10. And the Chargers defeat the Eagles 22-19 on Monday Night Football. And when it comes to the Chiefs, to quote Kendrick, paraphrase Kendrick, their superpowers get neutralized. I can only watch in silence. And so now the Chiefs are 6-7. Not the song, by the way. They're 6-7. As far as their current record in the NFL, and see, like if anything, we're getting even another step closer to not seeing Taylor in the Super Bowl, and I ain't mad at that at all. And another thing, once again, this podcast is all about defending greatness, and so of course we're not about hot takes and rage bait and things like that, especially when it comes to what I've seen out of the NBA when it comes to people questioning Jordan's greatness, his offensive arsenal, and where Kobe ranks all the time. Like, nah, certain things don't need to be a conversation. Certain things, if anything, like I said, aren't worth really discussing like that. You know what I mean? And those are two ironclad legacies, that don't need to be disputed. And shout out to Kevin Garnett and Lou Williams, respectively, for speaking up, when it comes to those, situations where KG, called out his own teammate Paul Pierce for talking crazy. You know what I mean? If somebody's going to have over 20 and 30,000 points, they definitely have to have an offensive bag, an arsenal of greatness, and that's what Jordan had. Arguably the greatest scorer of all time, 10-time scoring champion. You may tell me he doesn't have a bag. You may tell me he doesn't have, he didn't have an arsenal. He was very strategic about it, but he definitely had it. Strategy as well as athleticism. That was, Jordan's game plan. Same with Kobe. You know what I mean? And the thing about it is that Kobe's legacy, just like Michael, is ironclad, and so there's no reason for people to bring up all these other names of these guys that are not of their caliber. And so that's the thing I'm not for. But yeah, in fact, I had to re-upload and kind of re-record, re-record this episode a little bit, just because there was a, technical issue could go on the StreamYard side, but nonetheless, like I said, this sounds a little bit different, then that's the reason why. But yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to, that's pretty much it when it comes to this episode. And of course, I like to give birthday shout outs, as I normally do. And of course on December 7th, December 7th, basketball legend Larry Bird turned 69. Um, Ravishing Rick Rude would have turned 67. John Moxley, now known as Dean Ambrose, turned 40. Jeffrey Wright turned 60. On December 8th, Joy Reid turned 57. On December 9th, Kurt Angle turned 57. On that same day, Mara Sade, formerly known as Jakara Jackson, turned 31. Of course, on December 10th, JTG turns 41. On December 11th, WWE Hall of Famer, greatest luchador of all time, Rey Mysterio turns 51. And so that's it for the birthdays. And before I go, I would like to give a word of wisdom, and of course, and that is, God does not see what you say; He sees what you do. And so, that's pretty much it. And of course, you are victorious because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. When you put God in first place, you don't have to worry about being in last place. Please make sure to listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere that you download podcasts. Of course, you can also watch on YouTube, youtube.com/@Von West Virginia. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more great content. Thank you very much for watching and listening. And may this day be the very best day of your life.